The Gaza Strip, a densely populated Palestinian territory, has once again become the epicenter of a violent conflict. Israeli airstrikes, launched in response to a barrage of rockets fired by Hamas, have caused widespread destruction and claimed the lives of numerous Palestinian civilians. The relentless bombardment has left entire neighborhoods in ruins, with homes, schools and hospitals reduced to rubble. The deafening explosions and constant fear have made daily life unbearable for the people of Gaza. The Israeli military has stated that its targets include Hamas military infrastructure and rocket launching sites. However, the high civilian death toll and the indiscriminate nature of some of the strikes have drawn international condemnation. Human rights groups have accused Israel of using disproportionate force and of failing to take adequate measures to protect civilian lives. The situation in Gaza is dire, with the healthcare system overwhelmed and essential supplies running low. The United Nations has warned of an impending humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza, with millions of people facing shortages of food, water, and electricity. The international community has called for an immediate ceasefire and for both sides to allow humanitarian access to the besieged territory. The escalating violence threatens to further destabilize the already volatile region. The conflict between Israel and Hamas has spilled over into neighboring Lebanon, raising fears of a wider regional war. Israel has launched airstrikes against targets in southern Lebanon, which it claims are linked to Hezbollah, the Iran-backed Shiite militant group. Hezbollah, which has a significant military presence in Lebanon, has responded by firing rockets into northern Israel. The exchange of fire between Israel and Hezbollah has heightened tensions along the Lebanese-Israeli border, which has remained relatively calm in recent years. The Israeli military has deployed reinforcements to the border and has called on residents of northern Israel to remain in bomb shelters. Lebanon, which is already grappling with a severe economic crisis and political instability, can ill afford to be drawn into another conflict with Israel. The international community has urged both Israel and Hezbollah to exercise restraint and to avoid actions that could further escalate the situation. The United Nations Interim Force in Lebanon, UNIFIL, which has been deployed in southern Lebanon since 1978, has stepped up its patrols in an effort to prevent further clashes. The conflict in Lebanon underscores the interconnectedness of the region and the potential for local conflicts to quickly spiral out of control. The ongoing conflict in Gaza and Lebanon has triggered a humanitarian crisis of immense proportions. In Gaza, the relentless Israeli bombardment has resulted in widespread destruction of civilian infrastructure, leaving millions of people without access to essential services. Hospitals are struggling to cope with the influx of casualties, while shortages of medical supplies and essential medicines are reaching critical levels. The United Nations has warned that the humanitarian situation in Gaza is on the verge of collapse, with over 2 million people facing acute shortages of water, food, and electricity. The blockade imposed by Israel and Egypt, while ostensibly intended to prevent Hamas from obtaining weapons, has severely restricted the flow of humanitarian aid into the territory. The combination of the ongoing conflict and the blockade has created a dire situation for the civilian population of Gaza. In Lebanon, the influx of displaced people from the south has overwhelmed the country's already strained resources. Many of the displaced are seeking refuge in schools, mosques, and other public buildings, which are ill-equipped to provide adequate shelter. The Lebanese government, grappling with its own economic woes, has appealed for international assistance to address the growing humanitarian needs. The international community must act swiftly and decisively to alleviate the suffering of civilians caught in the crossfire. This includes providing urgent humanitarian assistance, facilitating the delivery of essential supplies, and pressing for an immediate ceasefire. The humanitarian crisis unfolding in Gaza and Lebanon is a stark reminder of the devastating human cost of conflict. Section 4. Global calls for restraint and de-escalation. The international community has reacted with alarm to the escalating violence in Gaza and Lebanon, issuing urgent calls for restraint and de-escalation. Governments and international organizations have condemned the loss of civilian life and have urged both sides to take immediate steps to end the fighting. The United Nations Security Council has held multiple emergency meetings to discuss the situation, but has so far failed to agree on a joint statement due to divisions among its members. The United States, a close ally of Israel, has expressed its support for Israel's right to defend itself. but has also called for a ceasefire and a return to negotiations. European Union leaders have similarly urged both sides to exercise restraint and to work towards a peaceful resolution of the conflict. The Arab League has condemned Israel's actions and has called for an end to the blockade of Gaza. Several countries have launched diplomatic initiatives aimed at brokering a ceasefire and reviving the stalled Israeli-Palestinian peace process. Egypt, which has played a mediating role in previous conflicts between Israel and Hamas, has been engaged in shuttle diplomacy in an effort to secure a truce. France has proposed a UN Security Council resolution calling for a ceasefire and the deployment of international observers to Gaza. While diplomatic efforts continue, the situation on the ground remains volatile. The cycle of violence and retribution has fueled a deep sense of mistrust and animosity between the parties, making a negotiated settlement elusive. The international community must remain engaged and must work tirelessly to create the conditions for a just and lasting peace. Section 5. The Quest for a Lasting Peace. The latest round of violence in Gaza and Lebanon serves as a stark reminder of the intractable nature of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and the urgent need for a just and lasting peace. For decades, the region has been trapped in a cycle of violence, mistrust, and failed negotiations. The root causes of the conflict, including land disputes, security concerns, and the status of Jerusalem, remain unresolved, fueling resentment and perpetuating the cycle of bloodshed. The two-state solution, which envisions an independent Palestinian state alongside Israel, has long been the cornerstone of international peace efforts. However, the prospect of a two-state solution has become increasingly distant in recent years, as Israeli settlements in the West Bank have expanded and as Palestinian political divisions have deepened. The international community must reaffirm its commitment to the two-state solution and must exert pressure on both Israel and the Palestinians to return to the negotiating table. A lasting peace will require difficult compromises from both sides. Israel must end its occupation of the West Bank and must allow for the establishment of a viable and contiguous Palestinian state. The Palestinians in turn must renounce violence and must recognize Israel's right to exist in peace and security. The international community has a crucial role to play in facilitating dialogue, providing economic assistance, and guaranteeing the security of both states. The quest for peace in the Middle East is fraught with challenges, but it is a quest that must not be abandoned. The human cost of the conflict is simply too high. The international community must work together to break the cycle of violence and to create a future where Israelis and Palestinians can live side by side in peace, security, and dignity.